So that's what's kind of great about the Intended Ranger School, because the Intended Ranger School is to get people suffused throughout the entire Army with Ranger training, with a Ranger mindset, with Ranger tactics. The intent is they want people to graduate that school and then to filter throughout the entire Army, whether they're a platoon leader or whether they're in a special forces team or whether they're a Ranger battalion, stud. They want everyone to go out there, filter out, and teach everyone these tactics, teach everyone this mindset, and lead by example, showing the rest of the Army what a Ranger is and what a soldier can be.
Everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. Happy to have everyone back with us again. We have a great author on the show, and we're going to be talking about his book. Now, I've had so many people on the show that have come from serving their country in the military, from Canadians and Americans and people from around the world that have served. There's different levels. There's different things and opportunities in front of these amazing, talented men and women who serve our country. There's another level in America, and we're going to get into this, and it is probably one of the most intense training programs that anyone can ever voluntarily sign up to be a part of and be included in. And my guest today, Andrews, was part of this, wrote a book about it, and if you ever see a Ranger like icon on the side of their uniform, there's a lot of meaning behind that. And Andrew's going to talk about his journey. His book is The Mediocre Infantryman's Guide to Ranger School. And we're going to learn more about Ranger School and all that great stuff. Andrew, welcome to the podcast. So glad to have you here.
Thank you for having me here, Dave.
Excellent.
It's a pleasure.
Let everybody know, Andrew, first of all, where are you in this big world of ours?
So I live right by the beach near Los Angeles.
It sounds terrible for a guy in Canada where it's so cold.
It's a terrible place. It's actually very nice. It's hard to leave here.
Excellent. So let's go back into your military career. Andrew, what was the initial desire or spark for you to sign up and serve your country? And then I want to kind of get into where you went from there. But what was the initial draw for you to get in and serve?
Well, I graduated from high school in 2003, and you guys will recall that was a year that the United States invaded Iraq. And so in 2004, I'd been at community college for about a year, and I was restless and getting in trouble, and I was in a microeconomics class. And I remember I just had this bolt of inspiration saying, look, man, you need to get out of here. You need to go have an adventure. This economics class is terrible. It's so boring. Let's go ahead and go to the recruiter's office right after this and see if I can join the military and have an adventure.
Wow. Just that quickly? Like no talking to people in your family? Just, this is where I'm going to go?
No, it really was just a bolt of inspiration out of the blue. I think it was building up because the year after high school, I wasn't doing much. I was going to community college, but I wasn't really working. Didn't have a lot of purpose and direction in my life. I'd been in my hometown my whole life, so I got this itch, and I just had to go.
Amazing. So where did you start your military career? Like where did you start serving?
So I joined the Army, and I joined the Army Infantry. So we went to basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia. And then after that, completing that, I was assigned to the 4th Infantry Division at Fort Carson, Colorado, where I spent a year training before I went to Iraq my first time.
So give us some context, because we're going to get into Ranger School compared to when you first enlisted. What's it like kind of walking on base for somebody like me who's never done this? I'm a little nervous. I see videos of like a bus full of people and somebody comes on and they're very loud and they're yelling at you to get off my bus and let's go. Like it's just like you're thrown into the mix.
So that scene that you're describing there is the kind of archetypal basic training entry scene where you go from civilian to the world of the military, and it's a very abrupt shift. And it's like you described. Yes, you're going to go from that world of being a civilian doing whatever you want to getting on a bus with a bunch of strangers you don't know with shaved heads, and then having big scary men yell at you and introduce you to the unique, savage and crazy world of the U.S. military.
Is there an underlying reason why that's your first introduction to serving your country? Like, it feels very scary.
It is very scary. I think that's for a purpose because the military will often say this, especially in things like basic training where they have to mold a civilian into a soldier. They have to break you down before they can rebuild you back up. They have to break old habits. They have to break your old identity. It's really an immersion into a new life. And so they have to make that shift abrupt, and they really have to kind of almost kill off the old civilian inside of you so that they can create a soldier.
And I can see, based on my conversations with past guests who have served their country, and again, thank you for all the amazing service you've done for your country. There's stories that happen once you've gone through the process and you've been stationed somewhere and you're in the heat of it. That kind of training will keep you alive and keep the people next to you alive because you're serving along with your brothers and sisters, and you're accountable not just for yourself. You're accountable for your team, and everything that they're pouring into you from that moment on the bus to the moment your boots hit the sand in another country, it all comes back to be your tool chest to keep you alive and to keep those around you alive. So it's super important that you understand how to work in a team, how to not be so self-sufficient and focused on yourself. There's a lot of things that you need to unlearn, right, coming on base?
Absolutely. You have to learn how to be a member of a team, to sacrifice your own needs for those of others, and more importantly for the mission. And it takes you have to, it's a steady process. It's a gradual process. Every training program class doesn't start, well, not all, I'll say some do, but they don't start with a 12-mile ruck march right out the gate. They do a 2-miler or a 4-miler, then a 6-miler. It's a steady process of getting a person inured to struggle and hardship. Because it is the infantry life in particular is a very tough life where you're not sleeping a lot. You're operating in very harsh, dangerous environments like Iraq, where it can be over 110 for months on end, and you're wearing body armor that weighs 40, 50, 60 pounds every single day. So if you were a civilian off the street thrust into that environment, the odds are it's probably going to physically, mentally, or spiritually break you. Mm-hmm. So it takes a lot of training to inure a person to endure the hardships required. And the military, you're always on a time schedule. So yes, they have to make the training very meaningful, very purposeful. You never want to waste a minute if you can. There are those times when you hurry up and wait, but an efficient, productive unit will always make sure that someone is training and learning, because as you said, when you get to the actual operations in a combat zone, you want to be ready.
So talk a little bit about the building you up part, because we kind of been focused on the breaking you down part. What kind of stuff happens behind the scenes within team, with all of your cohorts that are all on the same level as you starting out? How do they build team back into you over your training period?
Well, they basically present you with challenges. Hopefully they start small and grow larger as you go. Challenges that at the time seem difficult or impossible, but then when you work as a team, you somehow get them done, or things somehow transpire and the terrible day is over at some point. But every time you kind of conquer one of these challenges, one of these missions with your team, you grow closer. You grow more used to working with each other. You know what capabilities everybody has, what capabilities you have, what you can bring to the team next time, what you need to work on. So it's just a constant process of improvement.
The one thing I noticed too when I watch all the videos, because again, I haven't experienced this and I don't know how I would fare, I got to say, I don't know how I would do. But the one thing I hear and I watch is when you see somebody new on base first time, and they bark out a command at this new recruit, and they are so timid and quiet. And they're like, I can't hear you. And they're like in their face, and they're like screaming right in their face to get them to use their voice.
Yeah, their man voice.
Why is that so important?
Well, because especially in a job like the Army infantry, where your job is to close with, engage, and destroy the enemy, you have to be aggressive. You have to be assertive. You can't be meek. When bullets start flying, bombs go off, they don't want people that are going to hunker down and be timid and weigh decisions for 5 hours. They want someone who is going to step up, be willing to issue commands, be willing to put themselves out there, be a presence for others to follow. And basically, you have to step out of yourself. That's one thing I really enjoyed about the military in particular, is that they encourage and allow you to be yourself, to be loud, to be a presence in a room, which is very rare in civilian life, I would say, unless you're a Fortune 500 CEO or a big famous trial attorney. you very rarely get the chance to really put yourself out there aggressively, strongly, and just be a force of nature. And so they want soldiers like that. They don't want timid people. And they want people to speak loudly and be heard. And it's a crazy trait, because most people in the civilian world, they don't want to do that. They want to have their eyes down, get to work, not be loud, not be noticed. But the military prizes that in people.
Okay, so between the time that you went through your initial, getting through basic training and getting stationed, where did you serve before you went into Ranger School? Where did you go?
So I went to Iraq for a year-long tour. We were in a place called Diyala province, which is a little bit to the north east of Baghdad. And it's like a big province there. And we did a lot of vehicle convoys, presence patrols. We had a city that we were in charge of called Khan Bani Saad, KBS, which is about, I don't know, probably 40 or 50 miles away from our big base that we lived at. So we would have to go down there almost daily. Sometimes we would live there for weeks on end at the army base there, or at the Joint Communications Center there, work with the Iraqi police, work with the Iraqi army. It was 2006 when this was happening, which was the height of, 2006 and 2007 were the height of the Iraqi insurgency. That's when they were really, it was pretty much a civil war. The Sunnis and the Shia were really going at it with each other, doing assassinations, kidnappings, car bombings, all the bad stuff you saw on the news. And the organization that was actually the predecessor to ISIS or Islamic State, which was called Al Qaeda in Iraq, they were operating heavily in our area. At one point they considered Bakuba, which was the capital of Diyala province, the capital of their quote unquote caliphate. So it was a cool place to be, and they would attack us sometimes, but at that point in the war, they were really just concerned with the Shias and the Sunni in particular, with attacking each other. And so we were doing a lot of trying to keep everything peaceful, keep a lid on things. And I don't know if we were that successful, but that was kind of our mission at that point.
So through Iraq, then did you serve anywhere else before Ranger School?
No, because at the time I went to Ranger School, I had only been in the Army for about 3 years. So I did a train up for a year in Iraq, and then part of a train up, and then I went to Ranger School.
So for those people who have no idea what Ranger School is, in comparison to what we just talked about for like basic training and all that level, comparison to your first, boots on the ground at your base to then going to Ranger School, can you compare it to something else like kindergarten versus college? Like, what can you give us some other parameters that we can understand? What's the difference?
So I never put it in those terms before, but if I always thought of Ranger School as kind of getting a master's in the infantry.
Okay.
So I guess you could call it basic training, let's say high school, community college.
Okay.
And then when you go to your unit and you get your unit training with all your squad leaders and your team leaders and everything, that's really your, like, I guess that would be like your undergrad. And once you kind of go through a year or two with your unit, 1 or 2 deployments, I'd say you're like a full-fledged infantryman at that point. And then Ranger School would be, I'd say in that, with that analogy, it would be kind of like going to get your master's in the infantry.
The level of seriousness and the level of impact on your body and everything else is a little different, though, for Ranger School, right?
Well, Ranger School purposely is intended to really break you down. Like in basic training, they have that dynamic, especially in the first week or two, where they try to break you down. But they're not trying to break you down to the point of you approaching mild starvation and severe sleep deprivation. They're gonna let you sleep 5 or 6 hours a night in basic training, whereas in Ranger School, they might give you 1 or 2 hours or 0 hours of sleep, depending on where you are in the course. And basic training, they'll sustain, it's rigorous and it's going to test you and push you. But Ranger School takes everything to the next level. So it's just, there's a lot of similarities, but they don't want to break you down. They don't want to break you to the point of you leaving and quitting in basic training. They want to get kind of everyone through as much as possible. Whereas Ranger School, if they break you and you have to leave, that's perfectly fine with them. That's almost what they want.
You mentioned to me when we first chatted, there's a number of people that started when you started, and then there was a number of people that remained with you near the end. Kind of what's the breakdown? Like how many people started at a given time, roughly? And how many people were there for you?
Yeah, so pretty much throughout the entire history of Ranger School, ever since it was created in the early 50s during the Korean War era, there has been pretty much averaged out, it's always a 50% failure rate.
Wow.
50% of the people that attempt Ranger School will fail it. And that means a lot because most people that go to Ranger School are already phenomenal soldiers and athletes. Most of them have been training for months, if not years. They've been vetted by their units. They've been trained up by their units. They've most likely gone through something called a pre-Ranger course, which is almost like another phase of Ranger School that most units make their soldiers go to just to get the right to start Ranger School. Sorry, I lost track. What was the question again, Dave?
Yeah, just the idea of like how I guess let's go for a little further. How do you get into the Ranger School? Like, is it you're volunteering to sign up, or did somebody tap you on the shoulder and say, Andrew, you're going this way now?
Well, everyone that goes to Ranger School is a volunteer.
Okay.
But there's different levels of volunteering. Like for me, I got to go to Ranger School on a very lucky whim. We were in the middle of training up for my second tour to Iraq. Some of my boss's third tours, but that's another story. We were in the middle of that, kind of getting ready to go in a few months, and just randomly our battalion a larger unit got a couple slots to go to Airborne and Ranger School, and my platoon sergeant at the time basically pulled me into the office and said, Goldsmith, would you like to go to Airborne or Ranger School? And I said, yeah, sure, Airborne School would be great. Let's go. And he said, okay, great, go get your physical. And on the way to to the hospital for my physical, one of my buddies just said, you should just go to Ranger School instead, Goldsmith. Why not? And I thought about it for about a split second in my head and said, yeah, sure, Hunter, let's do it. And so I go back with my physical paperwork in hand, go to the platoon sergeant and say, hey, look, actually, I don't want to go to Airborne. I'd rather go to Ranger School, Sergeant. He said, oh, that's great, Goldsmith. And I said, well, how much time do I have to prepare? He said, well, you got about 3 weeks before the course starts. And so at that point, I was fully committed. I had 3 weeks to train. And 3 weeks later, I was showing up in the morning with zero sleep and getting ready to start Ranger School.
And they move you around through the training. You're not in one location the entire time, right?
Correct. Ranger School has really three phases. They have the first one is at Camp Rogers and Camp Darby. The first week is called Rap Week, and that's where they just try to get as many people out of there as possible. And they really put you through a ringer for about a week. And then you can do your initial training down the road at Camp Darby. And then once you complete that phase, then they send you up to Mountain Phase, which is near, it's Camp Merrill, and that's near Dahlonega, Georgia, up in the kind of North Georgia mountains, a very pretty area. Very pretty and very cold and very brutal. And then the third and final phase is the Swamp Phase, which takes place in Florida. And it's called the Swamp Phase, and that's by the coastal beaches and swamps by the Panhandle there.
So you're dealing with different climates, different weather, everything in your training as well, on top of what the physical aspects of what you're doing.
That's correct. And actually back in the earlier days of Ranger School, I believe like in the 70s, 80s timeframe, they used to have a fourth phase of Ranger School, which is a desert phase. Oh. But they phased that out a few decades ago for whatever reason, probably just to make the course a little shorter and save money on trucking everyone out to the western part of the United States.
So what is the draw for men and women to go into this? Like, what is the result that people are expecting by going through the training and going through Ranger School?
So when you go through Ranger School, if you successfully complete it, you earn what's called a Ranger tab, which you mentioned earlier. It's something worn on the left shoulder. It's kind of an arched piece of fabric, and it says the word Ranger on it. And that's what you receive at the end of the course. And people that wear a Ranger tab on their uniforms are set above their peers when they go back to their units, when they go to lead their first platoon, if they're an officer attend the course, even if they're a very elite Green Beret that already has their Special Forces tab, considered gods among men in the infantry. Even when they get a Ranger tab and they come back to their units, it sets them apart from people who don't have it. It's basically kind of a badge of accomplishment, of achievement, saying, this person has been through this rigorous, standardized course that has existed for decades to prepare soldiers for combat. A very elite course that very few soldiers get to go to. Only 1,000 or 2,000 graduate a year out of an army of 500,000 people or whatever it is, and it really just sets you apart as someone who can lead in very austere circumstances, someone who who has a little more than their peers to offer in terms of enduring the struggle and leading when times are really rough.
So you go through Ranger school, you get your tab, then what? Then where do you go from there?
So that's what's kind of great about the intent Ranger School, because the intent Ranger School is to get people suffused throughout the entire Army with Ranger training, with a Ranger mindset, with Ranger tactics. The intent is they want people to graduate that school and then to filter throughout the entire Army, whether they're a platoon leader or whether they're in a special forces team or whether they're a Ranger battalion, stud. They want everyone to go out there, filter out, and teach everyone these tactics, teach everyone this mindset, and lead by example, showing the rest of the Army what a Ranger is and what a soldier can be.
So you're in effect the tide that raises all ships.
That is one of the intents of Ranger School. Yes.
Okay, I like that. Okay, so on the cover of your book, you show an image of the Ranger tab. Is that similar? Is that similar to exactly what it is then?
Right here.
There you go. So
no, this right here, this is actually from a photograph of a real Ranger tab. This is exactly what it looks like, and you'd wear that on your left shoulder. It's quite a bit smaller than it is right here, though.
Okay, so that's okay. Now, the title of your book, though, when you talk about people pre-planning to go through Ranger School and training, the pre-training to do the thing, and here you are walking into your superior's office saying, I'll do it, and you go 3 weeks later. Your title of your book, The Mediocre Infantryman's Guide to Ranger School, give me the perspective of why this book and why that title. I'm interested to kind of see, let's go into a little bit more about the book now.
Yeah, so, I wasn't an elite soldier. I was just your basic infantryman. And I would say even a mediocre one because I was a mechanized guy. We would ride around in Bradley fighting vehicles, and, we don't ruck march as much as guys from the elite 82nd Airborne or 10th Mountain. We're just regular old infantry guys. We don't jump out of planes. And when I was going to Ranger School, I was going there with very elite soldiers. Among them were Ranger Regiment guys, U.S. Army Green Berets, and the Army's youngest, most motivated officers that were, once they completed the course, were off to lead platoons in Iraq and Afghanistan. And whereas me, I was a corporal in the regular Army. I'd one tour in Iraq, but, I was basically just a frontline foot soldier, nobody special. And like we talked about earlier, I had 3 weeks to prepare for Ranger School. And during those 3 weeks, I was doing my regular job, which had me working close to 12 hours a day, waking up at 5 in the morning to go do PT at 6, leading my soldiers on the range. I had to train for Ranger School once I was done with that day. So you can imagine I didn't have much left for it. So yeah, I had very little preparation. I was actually ill prepared because the training I did do was very ineffective training for what I was going to face at Ranger School. But I was dumb. I was naive. I knew nothing. So I really just was a young babe in the woods thrown into a crucible. And that's why I think this book, The Mediocre Infantryman's Guide to Ranger School, is unique and interesting because I was just the everyman thrown into this school. So just like the reader, I didn't know anything about this place before I went. I just knew the myths and legends that had been passed down third hand to me from my squad leaders and my team leaders. And so the reader of my book gets to follow along with me and grow with me as I learn what it means to be a Ranger, as I confront these challenges that most likely like a civilian thrown in there would also confront, because I went to that school with very weak, unconditioned feet, as a person who just went in off the street would be. And I paid the price for that. My feet were macerated by blisters within the first few days, and I had to endure several weeks of having every single step I took be a painful nightmare. And especially when you're wearing an 80-pound rucksack, that's not a good feeling to have to walk all day every day with macerated feet. But anyway, yeah, this story is about the everyman going through an experience that usually only elite soldiers are going to go through. And so you get to see all my frailties, all my weakness. You get to see me really get pushed to the brink of failure. I almost quit in the book. It's a great story because this is kind of the experience that you, the reader, would have if you were just thrown into this crazy school.
And there's probably parallels from your story that could relate to a different situation that we may find ourselves in, to find that fortitude within us to keep going when everyone's telling us we don't belong there, or where everyone else is better prepared than you are. there's other situations where your story is going to have some really interesting parallels to maybe something else we're dealing with as well.
Well, something that I always like to think about is that for me, my Ranger school, in quotation marks, was indeed Ranger school. That was the hardest thing I ever had to face in my life. It was harder than anything I ever had to do in Iraq. But for other people, especially if you're not a soldier, your version of Ranger school might be something completely different. You know, someone else's version is going to be their dad dying of cancer, or losing a child, or getting incredibly sick and having to go through chemotherapy. You know, it's whatever your Ranger school is. It's the situation that puts you at rock bottom in life, that gives you a choice of, am I going to quit, or am I going to find a way, a reason, a purpose to rise above this challenge and overcome it?
What's your hope for a reader? First time reader of the book, they grab a copy, they're sitting down to read it today before they even start reading a single word. What's your message to them? What do you hope this book's going to help them with?
So my message for readers of The Mediocre Infantryman's Guide to Ranger School is that you don't have to be exceptional to do exceptional things. You just have to endure. You have to have fortitude. You have to find a purpose for the suffering. And if you have a purpose, if there's something great that is going to come through you enduring the suffering, then you can do it. You can find the strength. And but that's kind of the deep purpose. I also want readers to just laugh. Like, this book is a funny book because it shows someone who you know, pardon my French, is an idiot, you know, totally unprepared, going through these courses that crush Green Berets, and making it work because he has a good sense of humor, because he kind of is quick-witted, because he's a good judge of human character. And I also think readers are going to enjoy this book because there's so many great secondary characters in this book too, and people are going to recognize the versions of these characters in their office space. If they're in the military, they're going to recognize these guys as members of their own squad. Like, the guys that went through the school were almost more than the elements, more than the Ranger instructors crushing me. The interactions I had with my fellow teammates, my fellow Rangers, really taught me a lot of things and made the course valuable.
Tell us about an example, a moment where you just felt like you're in the wrong place. This is not worth my time. I shouldn't be here. There's all these other people well more prepared than I am. I'm struggling. They seem to be thriving. A lot of people are going to identify with this situation. What was an example from Ranger School, and how did you find the power to keep going?
No, I think that's very good insight there. I think imposter syndrome is what you call that. When you're in a place that you've worked hard to get to, and you look around you and everyone else seems to be doing better than you. They seem to know what they're talking about. They seem to belong, and you question yourself. You say, what am I doing here? I don't belong. I should just leave. I'm bringing the team down. And I had those thoughts relentlessly, especially the first phase of Ranger School before I really found my purpose for enduring. Those doubts assailed me. They pushed me close to the point of being literally crazy. That was combined with the sleep deprivation and starvation, of course. But these thoughts were having me contemplate things like, hey, look, if I just jump off this ridgeline here, land at the right angle, break my ankle, they'll have no choice but to kick me out of this course. Or, oh man, if I punch that annoying guy in the face that I hate so much right in front of the Ranger instructor, they'll have no choice but to kick me out of here. Like, these thoughts would run through your mind relentlessly. And you would have to have the other voice, it'd be an angel and a devil on your shoulder almost. And you'd have to have the angel on your shoulder say, no, you got to endure. You belong here. You made it so far already. Keep pushing through. But meanwhile, there's a devil on your shoulder saying, nope, you don't belong here. You're weak. Cut your losses now. Your men are going to Iraq. Go home. Have some sushi with them. Get ready for your second tour. You're wasting your time here. And you have to, that part of the struggle is learning to identify which one of those voices you should listen to and not give in to weakness. And if you have a reason to be there, believing in yourself. And it took me the whole course of that school to really believe in myself, and that was one of the values of this course. One of the things the reader will take away with them, hopefully, is that to earn something worthwhile, it takes a lot of struggle sometimes, but usually in the end it's worth it. And when you're an old person, you're looking back on your life and you're thinking about the great things you did. It's funny that most of the great things, at least for me, maybe other people are different, but I think about the times that were brutal at the time, but now I look back on them and they're so sweet, and they're what I talk about when I'm with my friends. It's those hard times that really kind of forge you as a person and shape your character.
So you said your purpose kept you going forward. What was your purpose?
So I don't want to reveal too many secrets to the book
Okay,
here.
good. Don't do that.
Okay. Yeah, let's leave that.
That's a good.
That'll be answered in the rock bottom chapter, one of my favorite chapters.
There you go, everybody. Now you got to buy the book. That was a great. That's a great moment, Andrew. I love that. That's great. So you go through Ranger School. What does graduation look like from Ranger School? What happens?
They have a very nice graduation ceremony where people that are stationed close by, they have relatives that want to come, they have friends that want to come, squad mates, leaders. Pretty much anyone who wants to come is invited to the graduation. The whole class, which is generally, usually about 150-ish people. It's different for every class, but that's about usually what a graduating class is. Are assembled in formation, and then a couple colonels come up and give some nice speeches. They have this very cool event called Rangers in Action, which shows, has all these helicopters and very well-trained ranger instructors and guys from ranger units, jump out of helicopters into the lake and do hand-to-hand fights with knives, and it's really cool. And the funny thing is, we do very little of that actual stuff in Ranger School, but it does impress the families and make them think we're much more awesome than we actually are. But anyway, yeah, it's a great thing. If you ever have the chance to attend one, it's an experience, and you'll never see bigger smiles on the faces of skinny, hollow-cheeked men, because they know that it's over. It's all they have to do is stand there, and they get there, listen to some speeches, and they get their tab on their shoulder, and you can have one of your loved ones pin it on you, or one of your bosses is up to you. And it's just a great time. And when I went through it, being the mediocre infantryman I didn't even know that you could invite people to graduation. I never even put any thought to it. So I didn't have anyone there for me. But I was so happy to see everyone's family members and teammates come up and hug them and smile, see them hanging out with their kids. It was definitely, beyond a doubt, one of the best days of my life, especially because after that, I got to leave the school and eat as much food as I wanted. And I ate so much food at the Atlanta airport that day. It was ridiculous.
Going through this whole Ranger School, was there somebody that you really bonded to? Someone else that was going through this, and the two of you kind of just gravitated to each other in the process?
That didn't really happen until when I went through Florida phase, the last phase, my second time. I finally kind of linked up with what the Army would like to call a battle buddy, or in Ranger School you call your Ranger buddy. But your battle buddy, your Ranger buddy, whatever you want to call him, that's your foxhole buddy. That's your guy that you rely on him and he relies on you, and it's you and him versus the world kind of a thing. And I did not really have that the entire Ranger School until I guess my very last few weeks. I did meet a guy. His name was Powell. That's not his real name, but that's the name in the book. And he was from a similar unit as mine. He was actually from my sister unit. We were like two, rarities in that school. And maybe because of that, maybe because he was another kind of, redhead, loud, funny guy, we just bonded instantly. We clicked, and it was very nice to have a battle buddy during that final stage of the school. It did make things a lot easier. It made things a lot better. But no, for the most part, I went through that school without too many close bonds, which was one of the great challenges that I had as a mediocre infantryman. And one of the things that I think makes the book so unique, because I was kind of in that position, I kind of got to be like more of a journalist, observer of the other people. I got to kind of see the various tribes of Ranger School, how the lieutenants would all get together and do planning, or how all the airborne Rangers would always stick together, thick as thieves, doing everything that they did to support each other. But no, I was kind of, until the very end, I was always a kind of perpetual outsider there.
If there was a tab that said mediocre on your uniform, do you think that the Ranger School tab would have been a replacement for that? Like, do you still consider yourself to be mediocre?
No, I still consider myself a mediocre infantryman because, I went back to my unit, and mediocre is kind of tongue-in-cheek. I like to use that term because there's a lot of military authors that you'll see out there are Navy SEALs, or they're Army Green Berets, or they're Army Delta Force, or they're Air Force Search and Rescue. These elite, top of the crust guys, like the 1% of the 1%. Almost like, when you're an infantryman in the military, you see these guys, like I said earlier, as gods among men. Like, you see them, you get out of their way, you lower your eyes, you speak in hushed tones about their legendary exploits. So that I was never that guy. I got to meet some of these guys in Ranger School because the Green Berets and the Ranger Regiment, they send their guys there, and I got to interact and meet and even kind of make friends with some of these guys. But I was not part of them. I'm just a regular infantry guy. I earned my tab and I went back to my regular unit, and we went back for another grueling, grinding 15-month tour to Iraq. And I was just one of the boys again, except I had my tab, which gave me more responsibility. It gave me more. I had to do more with that. So it did set me apart. But no, I will always be a mediocre infantryman, and I take pride in that.
I like that. How were you?
And I think it's more relatable. I think it's more relatable to the reader. I think it's these Navy SEAL stories and stuff. They're incredible, and I have so much respect for these guys. And I could never do what those guys did. But some of their exploits, it's too hard to relate to as an everyman. Like they just don't know what that world is like. And so I try to be like a bridge. I want to take any reader, whether that's a 17-year-old boy looking for a purpose in life to a 67-year-old, Marine vet that served in the Cold War. I want them all to understand this book, to read this book, and know what this experience was like from the inside.
Coming back to your peers now with the Ranger tab, do you walk into your peers group and where you serve chest out, like proud that you've gone through this process, or do you come in with humility? How did you approach people who knew you before the Ranger tab?
Well, I think it's a balance of both. I think, especially the first few weeks or the first few times, my chest was out. My back was straight. Everyone could see my tab, but that passes. You kind of, it's cool for a day or two, but if that becomes the be all end all of your existence, if that's you can't just rest on your laurels. So no, you have to balance that with humility. To me, the best leaders always have that balance of not being too hard, not being too soft, right in the middle. It's you got to be proud of your tab and what you did, but you have a mission to do. There's more to do. You're probably gonna have greater challenges in your life. I was lucky because Ranger School was my greatest challenge. I didn't have, a terrible tours in Iraq like some people did. But some of the guys that I graduated with undoubtedly went on to see intense combat in Iraq and Afghanistan. And assuredly, some of them died. I know some of them died. And it's hard to get in touch with these guys. They're very hard to track down on Facebook. But, no doubt, they saw some terrible things that made Ranger School pale in comparison. So again, I'm mediocre for life. I am glad Ranger School was my toughest challenge.
We have listeners that listen overseas, serving on bases all around the world, who listen to the podcast, especially when someone like you comes on to talk about your story. Everybody kind of perks up because they're listening on base to what we're talking about. Your message to someone serving overseas, far from home, feeling alienated, feeling alone, missing everything, all the comforts of home and family. Any messages to those that are listening overseas?
Well, I remember being in your shoes, feeling alienated, feeling alone, feeling disconnected from the quote unquote normal life. But as they used to tell us, and as I will reinforce here, normal life goes on without us, and we're not really missing much. When you're overseas, when you're serving your country in a foreign exotic place with a little bit of danger, a little bit of mystery, a little bit of not knowing what's next, you are living a genuine life. You are having experiences that you will be telling your kids and your grandkids about. And it's a rare chance to really reflect and learn who you are, to learn who you want to be, what you don't want to be. I had one of the best parts about my military life was all the time when you're on guard, just to sit and think about what you want to make your life. All the times you can sit when you're waiting for a flight or something, you can just sit and read a book because you have nothing to do. It's a rare chance to be separated from normal life, which has so many demands on our attention, so many time wasters, so much to do when it comes to family and business and work and leisure. It's almost a blessing to be in a place overseas on a base with a mission, with a job, a singular task. And that's all you have to do, is just get the mission done. And that's one of the, it's tough to be in a place like Iraq where you're focused on the mission every day, but it's also nice. It's also a blessing where all you have to do is do your job, come back with all your fingers and toes, with all your soldiers, and then you can just hang out and chill with all your best buds and workmates. It's really great. So, you're going to, even if you serve, 5, 10, 20 years, it's only a small fraction of most people's lives. And so really treasure that time and know that you're working for a greater mission, and people respect that, and you're doing something valuable. So keep it up.
Amazing. Andrew, I got one more question here to wrap up. Thank you for your time today. I really appreciate you making time to be on the show. I want to send people to you. website, wherever we want to send the listener to connect with you. Maybe there's someone listening and they're like, I'd love to have Andrew speak to my group, or I'd love to promote Andrew's book in my group. Where can people reach out to you? And after that, I'd like to wrap up with a following question as well.
Okay, well, the best place to reach out to me is probably on Instagram, and I'll give you my handle,
Sure.
and that is at Mediocre Infantryman.
Okay, good.
On Instagram, there's lots there. And then my website is mediocreinfantryblog.com. And that has tons of articles, links to buy the book. The book is available on Amazon. If you just search for the Mediocre Infantryman's Guide to Ranger School, it'll pop up on Amazon. There's also a companion book called the Mediocre Infantryman's Annotated Ranger Handbook, and that's really cool project that my publisher had me do, which was take the actual Ranger Handbook, which is what was our Bible in Ranger School, and jot notes and comments and add photographs and maps and diagrams and extra Ranger history. So it's basically like a plussed up, bulked up Ranger Handbook. So if you really want to learn the tactics, the procedures, what Rangers do, what you do in that course, what historical Rangers have always done, that's a great book to check out. Right now it's only available in ebook, but we will have hard copies coming out shortly. So you can also find that on Amazon as well. It's the companion book. It's the Mediocre Infantryman's Annotated Ranger Handbook. So yeah, both of them are available on Amazon. Please check it out.
Amazing. Okay, so Andrew, you've gone through all this training. You've served your country. Again, thank you for all that you've done. Where have you landed now? And how have you taken the things you've learned and brought it into your life today?
So I got out in 2009, and I've had quite the journey since then. I studied philosophy in Hawaii. I worked for a little bit. I went back to finish my GI Bill at law school. Finished that, passed the California State Bar, which is another notorious rite of passage with a 50% failure rate.
Wow.
Funny enough. And now I primarily helped run a small business and also practice law part-time in addition to being a writer. So I'm a jack of all trades, master none. I have my fingers in a little bit of everything. But particularly when it came to law school and the study of law, Ranger School was immensely valuable because law school is another one of those notorious rites of passage in life that most people will describe as pretty hard. And I would say that there's three things in my life that lived up to the hype. One, having kids. Two, Ranger School. Three, law school. All three of those things are very difficult and very rewarding in equal turn. But anyway, having my Ranger experience in law school was immensely valuable. It allowed me to function on very little sleep. It gave me perspective, saying, look, this test is hard. It's 100% of my grade. Everyone else is stressing about it. But hey, there's no bullets flying. There's no RIs starving me to death. I could eat whatever I want. I can get as much sleep as I want tonight. So, no stress. And so having that mindset alone was immensely valuable in law school and gave me a lot of success and sanity and allowed me to keep some of my hair. And also raising kids. In some ways, it's hard for me to understand how people without military experience can even do it because, I'm kind of a nerd of sleep deprivation, doing random dirty missions at all hours of the night because the military helped me train for that. So to all parents without military experience, you guys are the real elite soldiers.
You deserve a parenting tab or something for you.
You deserve a parenting tab for sure.
I love it. Andrew, thank you so much for doing this again. Again, I keep reinforcing it, but for people to volunteer to come out of civilian life and go in to serve their country, to put their life on the line, to serve with men and women around you and support your country, keep us safe. Thank you so much. I just think when I see someone serving in the military, and I just feel compelled to come up and thank them and just acknowledge them and not just pass them by. Just the look of them and them being proud of what they do and how they show up in this world. I just liked honoring that on my show as well. So to you and everyone that's listening that are serving or have served, I just want to say thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for the support. We all appreciate it. And if I was 20 years younger, I would do it again because it was an incredible experience. And to any young people out there, looking for a mission, looking for a purpose, looking for a way to pay for their school, I highly recommend it. It's really was a great experience.
Amazing. Everyone, all the information for Andrew and the book, everything we talked about, all included in the show notes. You can click right there on your phone and go straight to Andrew. I'd love for you to reach out to Andrew, let him know that you heard the episode, And if you're going to Ranger School, you now have 2 resources in your hands that you need to get both of these books and study, because Andrew's giving
I wish I had these books.
Right? It would have been so helpful. And toughen up those feet, everybody. Don't punch anybody.
Toughen up those feet.
Don't punch anybody, and don't break your ankle, and you'll do fine.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Dave.
Thanks, Andrew. Hey, thanks for listening to the podcast. Glad to have you here. I just want to let you know that you can always find out what we're doing live in the moment by going to our YouTube channel. Head over to livingthenextchapter.com. There'll be a link right there. Head over to our YouTube channel. Make sure you like, subscribe, do all the things that all the YouTubers love to say. And in our YouTube channel, a couple things. You're going to get advanced listens. You're going to get the episodes that we're working on in real time. So we record and post daily on our YouTube channel. I'd love for you to give us a follow over there. As well, we're making playlists. We have over 500 episodes. So finding the right episode for you, we're trying to group things into playlists. So if you like children's books, if you like business, you like historical fiction, we're grouping our authors together to make it a little easier for you to find your favorite next author. So head over to livingthenextchapter.com. And again, I'd love to hear from you. Hearing from the listeners of the show is great. And I just want to say thank you for being a part of the podcast family. And I look forward to having you back for the next episode. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate your time and your listen. Take care.